Hello, we're back. In episode 9, I said we'd be talking about the Invader port to the Commodore 64, this time in assembly language using the CBM Program Studio IDE, shown here, a fully self-contained development environment for Commodore 8-bit computers. Here's the main part of the program: the constants and variables, my sprites, and some backup code. So now let's take a look at Invader programmed in assembly language running on a real Commodore 64. So you can see I'm also using the center part of the screen again, just like we were doing in the basic version. One difference besides, of course, that this is assembly and not basic and much quicker and smoother, is that I'm using the full arcade version of the sprites. So we'll go ahead and get shot a couple times, and just like the basic version, F1 is going to restart the game. So I wanted to give you an idea of just how much faster assembly language is than basic on the Commodore 64. So we're gonna load up the directory here. And we're going to list that. And we're gonna look at this program called Print Bees. And this is, actually, let's take a look at it. This is written in BASIC, and basically this just fills the screen with bees, with the letter B. And you can actually watch it draw on down the screen. Now, if we load the assembly version of this, which is right here. You can see it has a syscall to the start of the assembly language program, and when we run this, the screen instantly fills with bees. That's the power of assembly language on the Commodore 64. Okay, so as previously mentioned, I was going to also show you the C64. You can see that this thing is almost identical to the real bread bin 64, but this is a modern take. It's a whole lot lighter, and it hooks up. It has a much better video signal. It has HDMI out, and that makes for a much better video signal. Oh, this also has a working keyboard like a real Commodore 64. Whereas this is the one that came out first. This is the C64 Mini, and it also has HDMI out, but it does not have a working keyboard. But you can plug a USB keyboard into this device and use it much like a full-fledged Commodore 64. Here's a look at a little Mario demo level that I put together. It doesn't really do much, but it's kind of cool looking. And here's more. You can see also that here I am scrolling the screen by, and the sprites are still on the screen. You have to actually poke a location in order to turn those sprites off. They're totally independent of the rest of the display. So there's one more other little silly sprite demo that I have on here. Let's see. And you can see that the sprite just changed into the ship. And that's not the way it's supposed to look. Okay, let's fire up the 64 Mini. And there's our modern retro 64 startup screen. Now I have this set to boot directly into BASIC, so it looks just like a regular Commodore 64, but a much cleaner video signal with the HDMI out. Also, besides showing you the full size C64, I said that, and I almost forgot that I said I would be showing off my micro in this little 3D printed case made out of a Raspberry Pi Zero. So we'll be taking a look at that too as well later in this episode. Okay, so since this doesn't have a real keyboard, I could plug a USB keyboard into it, but what we're going to do is go ahead and use the special joystick that comes with this device to access the USB drive on the side here. And we're going to go down to this programming folder and assembly, and we're going to take a look at our Invader assembly. And there we have it. You can see that it's a much cleaner image. Also, I've got the aspect ratio stretched a little bit to look a little bit better on this monitor. There are settings in order to make that a more of a one-to-one scale, but I am using the interlace screens to make it look like an old television set. I'm not sure how that's going to show up on the video. So we'll go ahead and do this a few times. And we'll finish the game out. And there you have it. So there it is on the C64 Mini. Okay, so here we are with the C64. Now this one has a functional keyboard, as you can see. And really the only difference between this one and the Mini version is the keyboard and one extra USB port. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and we are going to plug this disc in. Actually, we'll go ahead and run the assembly version of Invader again on here, and it should look pretty much looks exactly the same because these devices are the same for the most part. But I just thought it would be kind of neat to show it on here as well. Now the difference here is having the keyboard connected. When the game is over, I can use the F1 key to restart it. Otherwise, you have to bring up an on-screen keyboard and select F1 from an on-screen keyboard, or connect the keyboard to the Mini. So there it is. Now I thought since I had the camera set up here at this monitor where my Raspberry Pi is set up, I would go ahead and show Invader running on a Commodore 64 emulator on the Raspberry Pi. So again, this desktop makes it look like a Macintosh, but it's actually just a little Raspberry Pi 4 overclocked to 1.9 gigahertz with 4 gigs of RAM, and Twister OS is what you're looking at here, so it's very Mac-like. This thing is great, so I'm going to go ahead and run RetroPie. And I have set up some emulators on here, but all the emulators that I set up work with a simple D-pad 2-button joystick. So there's RetroPie on a Commodore or I'm sorry, on a Raspberry Pi is capable of quite a bit more emulators than what you're seeing here, but I kind of kept them simple. So we're going to take a look at the Commodore 64, and we're going to go back down here to program again, and my work, and we're going to look at Invader. Now, you know what, we can go back and we're going to take a look at Invader Basic. I know we looked at this a couple of episodes ago, but I'm going to show you just how painfully slow it is compared to the assembly version again. And the emulation is pretty accurate. So you can see it takes a while to even load up the sprites. And again, you can see how chunky this is. It's just barely moving along. And it's barely moving along, and I used the old 8-bit or my 8x8 pixel sprites in this as well, hoping that, you know, that might speed things up. So, but it really didn't do much to help with the speed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back out here, and we'll look at the compiled version of that same basic program. So this was compiled in Blitz compiler. And you'll see it's considerably faster. I'm still using the 8x8 sprites in here, but you can see that Invader's moving a whole lot quicker, and it's definitely more playable. But again, there's only, you know, 4 sprites at any given time on the screen, so if you loaded this up with sprites, it would really chug. And we'll try, now we'll take a look at the assembly version, and you'll see that there's a huge jump in performance. So, and I'm using the full arcade version of the sprites on here as well. So anyhow, that is running on a Commodore 64 emulator running on a Raspberry Pi. So here's my little micro Commodore 64. This was created with a Raspberry Pi 02W, and I have a little tiny Bluetooth controller. And I'm going to show you my Commodore 64 version of Invader running on this little device. It's powered by the USB port on the back of my monitor, and that's a mini HDMI to HDMI cable going. So that's pretty much all that's necessary right there in order to run this on a TV pretty much anywhere. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and start this. This is RetroPie running on the Raspberry Pi. And it's cool that you actually get to see it. So here I am controlling this with with my left hand, which isn't the easiest thing. Oh, there, I just got killed. And we'll go ahead and take some shots at him. Uh-oh. Not looking good. Oh, game over. Anyway, there it is. Just wanted to show you that's my assembly version of Invader running on my micro Commodore 64. So these next 3 images are for size comparison. A Commodore 1541 5¼ inch drive compared to the Commodore 64 itself. Notice how it's actually larger than the computer. I also weighed the Commodore 64 and the 1541 drive. The Commodore 64 weighs about 4.2 pounds, and the 1541 drive weighs about 10.6 pounds. So now you can see why I used the cool little SD card reader from The Future Was 8-bit instead of the original drive. So that about wraps up episode 10 of my journey in game programming. Please like and subscribe and leave any comments or suggestions you may have that could make these a better experience.
Next episode, I will be showing a port of Invader to the Nibble, programmed first in circuit blocks similar to MakeCode Arcade, then converted to C++ in Arduino to add the sprites. Until then, bye. I'll talk to you next time.